Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Speaking Steagles, the premier Pennsylvania pro football podcast. I am Nick Vete. He is Ricardo Martinez-Paz. We have another episode coming at you guys where we're going to be talking all things going on with the Steelers and Eagles as we're down to the last week of the regular season at this point. Things have flown by. It's crazy how fast it's gone. And the Steelers and Eagles both somehow still alive. I don't know if I could have been saying that about the Steelers a couple weeks ago confidently, but here we are, and I'm saying it. And yeah, they've got a chance to make the playoffs, and the Eagles still have some work to do as they still haven't completely wrapped up the division or the number one seed in the NFC. So that being said, I welcome in Ricardo. Ricardo, how you doing, man? How has your week been? How you feeling?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's a loaded question. I mean, overall, not great. But more specifically about the Buffalo Bills, Damar Hamlin. Yeah, I mean that was just so. Just watching that, that was really hard, and it's just a shame that something like this happened. It's really sad. But with the negative comes some of the positive. That all the outpouring, all the support from the NFL, from all athletes from different sports. Donovan Mitchell from the Cavs, even after a 71-point game, acknowledged Damar Hamlin. It's just, man, that was. I mean, overall, this week has been, I don't know, really unique.
I think we all definitely feel that this is it's different from anything we've ever seen before, and obviously Steelers fans remember or are, it's up front in really any NFL fans' minds, but Steelers fans, kind of the horrors that can take place on the football field with the Ryan Shazier injury, which was immediately where my mind went when Damar Hamlin went down for an extended period of time on the field, on the same field actually in Cincinnati that it happened to Ryan Shazier. And to see something obviously that's so much more serious, something that's truly life-threatening with Damar Hamlin. Not only is it something that, you think about it in such a violent sport like football, and I really want to kind of echo a little bit as we spend the first couple minutes here talking about Damar Hamlin. One thing Ryan Clark said after it initially happened, he said, you use kind of these sayings in football, like, going to war with your teammates, willing to die out on the field for your teammates, going into battle. But, those are just words. And at the end of the day, everybody that plays this game is doing it as a form of entertainment, with obviously the expectation to go home and still, live your life to the fullest at the end of the day. So to see that obviously just pulled away from somebody in such a public eye, I think it's obviously something that's, tragic, and it's something that you never want to see. And, right now, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just, there's been such an outpouring of support for Hamlin since this happened. And, everybody's just hoping and praying that he can get better and that he can, pull through on this.
Yeah, it's, I mean, again, more positive with that he's doing better. His vitals are relatively normal. He's now at 50% oxygen, being administered 50% as opposed to 100%. So, I mean, I feel like I'm just constantly checking this. I like his health, like updates. I just hope he ends up okay. Like so many other people, it's just, man, it was heartbreaking. Still is, but I mean, I hope everything ends up okay with him. Obviously, at first and foremost, everyone's human. That's always the most important thing. Not anyone. This could happen to anyone, really. And it's just the response. I mean, the medical staff definitely deserves a lot of credit. I mean, having to do CPR on him and like restarting his heartbeat and all that, that's just, that saved him. And I mean, it's giving him a chance to live right now. And we're just hoping he keeps fighting and that he makes it through.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the fact of the outpouring of support again, and I just want to touch on it too, the fact that he had, this charity toy drive that had an initial goal, I think around like $2,000 or something like that. And after the injury, to just see the support from, athletes in the NFL, athletes around the country, celebrities around the country and the world, honestly, for that matter, and of course, normal everyday people who are donating um, to Hamlin's charity. And I don't know if you have the number what it was last updated. The last one I remember, I mean, it was up above 5 million, which I mean,
Yeah.
even to get to that level is just it's incredible. I know Tom Brady donated like 10,000. Russell Wilson and his wife donated a pretty hefty sum. Same with Andy Dalton and his wife as well. So it's like you see this outpouring of support, and it's just everybody wants him to get better. It's just one of those things that, especially too, it would have been. I think to a certain degree, it would have been like this in any situation. But the fact that it was also on, Monday night prime time, Monday night
Yeah.
football, I think, is the fact everybody was watching this game. Everybody saw it. Everybody, there was no avoiding it. And yeah, I think it was just at the top of everyone's mind, and it was definitely all I was thinking about for the rest of that night and into the next day. And even now, it's like like you said, periodically just checking to see if there's any updates. Every time you go on Twitter, just to look and see if there's good news on what's the latest with them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough situation, but yeah, I mean, it seems like things are trending in the right direction, so that's good news.
Yeah,
And
and I mean,
hopefully he wakes up to see all this, like that's so all this support and all all the messages and yeah, I mean, it's just yeah,
another
uh,
thing that I guess is kind of a point we can bring up, and I feel like at this point, as time has gone on with this, and he's continued to battle in critical condition, I feel like people have gotten to know more and more about him, and everybody that's been asked about it or anybody that's commented on it has said how good of a guy he was, and I mean,
yeah,
there's a connection to Pittsburgh to a certain extent. That's where he
hmm
grew up. He decided to stay local and play college football at Pitt. He's friends with Kenny Pickett, friends with, he has connections to Mike Tomlin. Supposedly Tomlin's known him since he was
yeah,
12 years old. So I mean, it's just like the connections to the area it's something that definitely has an impact on people around the NFL. It's not like this is just concentrated in Buffalo or to there even Brian Dable, who knew him like last year in Buffalo. It stems to New York. So you find these seeds and these connections to all these organizations, and I think that's part of the reason that it's touched so many people, and it's affected such a wide body of the NFL and even beyond that too, to a certain extent.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it's I mean, kind of. I mean, I don't know, just seeing these kinds of like interviews about Mike Tomlin knew him, and he's like he's a great kid, and all this, and all everyone else saying he's such a great human being, a great person. I mean, it just makes it that much more that much tougher to sort of see this happen to anyone, really.
Did,
But
did you
yeah,
ever watch the ESPN 30 for 30 documentary, Guru of Go? And it was on I think it was Loyola Marymount in their college basketball program, but that was the team and the year that Hank Gathers collapsed on the basketball court and died. Right there, they couldn't save him like they were able to with so far, and at least get Damar Hamlin to a hospital. But that was something that Dan Patrick brought up. I was listening to his radio show the other day, and he was like that it brings back echoes of something like that. It brings back kind of that feel on such a more serious level. We see guys, with horrific injuries, torn ACLs, torn Achilles, guys that, blow out different parts of their bodies. And obviously the NFL has such a huge problem with, protecting their players, specifically when it comes to head injuries.
yeah,
And we've seen a record number of different quarterbacks in the league this year, a part of that due to injuries and guys, needing to miss games or miss time. And, to have it be something like this, that's just cardiac arrest, so free, could have happened to anyone. And it's one of those things that is, you never really know when it's coming on. And the fact that, you know, honestly, he was lucky to a certain extent that the NFL personnel was there, and like you touched on, they were able to execute their job so perfectly.
yeah, yeah. I feel like they certainly deserve a lot of credit for this. I mean, otherwise he wouldn't be here. But I feel like just in general, medical staff is just I feel like something we take for granted a bit because injuries happen so constantly.
Mhm.
But just in this specific instant, like especially on TV when we heard Joe Buck saying that they were administering CPR and just like This is what they're
That's what
trained to
was
do.
that right there was like just a spine chilling moment when
Yeah,
Joe Buck actually said like not only because that to me was what kind of made me feel sick to a certain extent more than the Ryan Shazier injury is there's comments about guys oh we haven't seen him move his legs for the last however long we've been in commercial or whatever, or you talk about how long he's been down or they're bringing the card out, all these horrific aspects, but there's still always that question of, well, you can't make any assumptions, don't panic, they may be able to bring, and obviously Ryan Shazier is still able to walk now, and he's been able to, live a normal life. But when Joe Buck said that they've been giving him CPR for the last however many minutes when they went to that initial commercial break, that was chilling because that was when you knew this guy is literally on the verge of death.
yeah,
This and like we've echoed for the last couple minutes, thank thank the Lord that the NFL training staff that was there at this game, for both the Bills and Bengals, were able to flawlessly execute their job. They deserve a ton of credit, and honestly, a job that is bigger and more important than maybe anyone else in that stadium that night, is theirs, frankly.
yeah. This is. I mean, even if this doesn't happen very often, I mean, they're still trained for it. They're ready for it, and ultimately, he's still alive because of them. So
Absolutely. And I mean, we will continue to, obviously think about him and check in on how he's doing as this progresses, throughout the remainder of the week. And, I'm sure updates are going to continue to come out, and just hope and pray that he can find a way to get better. And obviously, there's lesser things that are more important, whether it's how the NFL is going to rework this game, or,
right,
how they're going to rework the playoffs and the week 18 schedule. All of that is obviously secondary. Um, and it's aspects that are going to be tricky, but the NFL is going to figure it out. They'll get by it. They'll survive, whether they have to just cancel this Bills Bengals game altogether, and go to some other format to determine which one has the better record, or whatever's going to happen. It's secondary at the end of the day, and at the end of the day, everyone is just hoping and praying that he can get better, and he can pull through on this.
yeah, exactly. Couldn't have said that better myself. So
Absolutely. And that being said, obviously that's going to continue to be in our minds, and in our prayers until we get hopefully good news on him. But we can still talk football because there's still stuff going on, and we'll still talk about both the Eagles and the Steelers. Obviously it being less important than what's taking place with him, but that's what we're also here to do. We're also here to talk about this last week of the NFL season, and try to just bring some sense of hey, there's still week 18 that's coming up. There's still games that's going to be played, and hopefully Damar Hamlin will be able to pull through from this. And that being said, that's obviously first and foremost. But now I think we can move on kind of to the Eagles, and that's where we'll start because they lost this week. And let's dive in and talk about their game a little bit, and obviously a game that they were trying to wrap things up both for the number one seed and the division. The Cowboys got the win last Thursday, so they remained in the hunt. The Eagles knew that going into this game, and they were unable to take down the Saints, and the Saints got the victory. And the Eagles now will go into basically a must-win game in Week 18 in order, if they want to win the division, or at the very least, or win the division and secure the number one seed. So, Ricardo, I mean, losing to a Saints team that now is eliminated from the playoffs. The Steelers beat the Saints this season. Um, where do you what break us down? What was your initial takeaway or your initial thoughts on this game, on this loss, as Whiskey gives us her presence here in the background?
yeah, so I'll start with my immediate reaction to that game. I mean, throughout the whole game, I mean, actually, I'll say this. Even before the game, I said this is going to be a tougher and closer game than people think. I was texting a friend of ours, Bridget Riley, and I said to her the exact same thing. And I was like, I don't have a good feeling about this for some reason. And usually, when that happens, when I get that kind of feeling, it kind of like plays itself out in some way. Um, and I mean, the Eagles just struggled the entire game. They looked horrible offensively. I mean, I don't know. It just didn't seem like they're ready to play. And it just like they kind of, I don't know if they just overlooked the Saints or if they just thought it was going to be like a walk in the park or something. But it just, I just didn't. seemed like they're ready to play. The only like positive in this game was the defense, I will say, and I'll start with that as my first takeaway, which kept them in the game. Yeah, in the second half specifically. Oh yeah, the Eagles defense allowed 13 points in the first half. The first few drives specifically, the Eagles allowed 5 out of 6 third down conversions and no incompletions to either Andy Dalton or Taysom Hill. And then, I mean, the first of those incompletions came on a Josiah Scott interception, which was late on in the second half. So it just, I don't know. It was a combination of like, I feel like players not really being on the same page. It seemed like players were wide open from the Saints, and then just until they finally figured it out. Those first few drives of the first half specifically, the Saints kind of took it to the Eagles defense. They kind of dominated line of scrimmage. I mean, time of possession wasn't even close. It was like a 15-minute margin. So it was. I mean, part of that's attributed to the offense, which we'll get into later. But um, initially, at least, it was a struggle from like every aspect, every unit, defense, offense, special teams. But then, like I said, the positive, which was the second half, they shut out the Saints offense and sacked Dalton and Taysom Hill 7 times, which I mean, prevented long drives, and they had a huge stand on the goal line on third and goal, which I'm surprised the Saints didn't go for. It was 10-0 at the time.
Yeah.
The Saints could have gone up 17-0, and then the Eagles stood strong and firm, and they held them to a field goal, which made it 13-0. But overall, I feel like the defense at least gave the Eagles offense a chance to get back into the game, which I'll get into in a bit. But
I mean, yeah, it's like I agree with what you're saying on the first half to a perspective, but I mean, 13 points in in any football game. I mean, that's a point that I made early on in the season with the Steelers. Is it's like your defense. I get they may not have played great all the time, but for the amount that they had to be on the field and that few amount of points, that should be enough to get the job done. I mean, they pitched a shutout in the second half. You know,
yeah,
to me, it gets to a point where it's as simple as that, and they came up with big stops, whether it was the goal line one you made or in the second half. There was even that QB sneak. Oh no, I'm sorry, that was Gardner Minshew that actually got held up on the QB
right.
sneak. But
Yeah.
for some reason, I just had that backwards in my mind. But still, I mean, to come up with that big spot, that big stop, and to limit the Saints to that many, 13 points, that should be enough to win a football game in the NFL, especially with how talented this Eagles offense is, and especially and just how much talent is on this roster overall, and what they've shown you throughout the season. It should have been enough to get a victory. And I don't want to kind of touch on your next takeaways on where you kind of place the blame on the offense, but I'll let you get into that. I think the defense did enough to get it done with how much they were on the field, with the little amount of points they had, pitching a shutout in the second half. I can't put the blame on them, even if maybe they did look a little lackadaisical in the first half.
Yeah, I'll just say, yeah, just to clarify, on the first few drives, fine. Like, yeah, like the Eagles defense didn't do well, but offensively, obviously, there's a whole different. There's a whole different. I'm going to try not to make this into a rant, but it may be that way. I mean, this was just hands down the worst performance on offense from the Eagles all season long. Actually, I feel like in recent memory, like even last season, I don't remember. Maybe the Bucks playoff game, at least the first half, was like the worst offensive half of football that I've seen in quite a while. Just this offense could not get into a rhythm. It was really hard to watch. A lot of penalties, especially on the offensive line. I believe four of which were false starts, maybe five. And so the offensive line was out of sync too. Lane Johnson's absence was certainly felt. The Eagles allowed Minshew to get sacked 6 times. Jack Driscoll got absolutely destroyed by Cam Jordan, who had 3 sacks in that game. They were behind. I felt like they were behind the chains way too often. They never even established any sort of run game. And Miles Sanders, we had a knee brace on. I feel like that might have played a role in it. But I said going into this week, you got to run the ball. 23rd against the run.
They had what?
The pass.
What was it? They had 2 carries in the first half. Was that just Miles Sanders, or was that the team as a whole?
I think that might have just been Miles Sanders because it was.
Still, that's inexcusable. Yeah. That's inexcusable.
Yeah, like he's having. Yeah, he might be banged up, but you got Buster Scott. You've got uh, Kenneth Gainwell. You know, they're still quality runners. You could still run the ball with them. At least I don't know. At least establish some sort of momentum, some sort of tempo, some sort of rhythm. They just didn't the whole game. They tried to throw it to AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goddard. I feel like the first half. I feel like Nick Sirianni and Shake Steichen, the offensive coordinator, they outsmarted themselves a bit.
Mhm.
I feel like they could have been. I don't know. I feel like they were trying to be aggressive, but also it just some of their play calling didn't really make sense. I don't really know what the game plan was other than attacking through the air, which I feel like was
To
wrong.
to
Uh,
me, to me, I feel like
just
it. I think
nothing
it's
went.
I think it's absolutely inexcusable that when you talk about how much better the Saints are against the pass than they are the run, bottom half of the league, well in the bottom half of the league when it comes to defending the run, and you ask Gardner Minshew, your backup quarterback, to throw the ball 32 times, when the Saints also have their star cornerback Marshawn Lattimore healthy for the first game in a long time.
Yeah,
You need, like, I'm sorry, run the football. If Miles Sanders is hurt, give Kenneth Gainwell, give Boston Scott some touches. I think that's absolutely a lot of that blame has to go on Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni in this one for just I think you're absolutely right. Trying to outsmart yourself, trying to be witty and I get being aggressive, but especially after the first couple drives, then you're leaving your defense out on the field for that extended
yeah,
period of time. It just leads to a bunch of issues. And then you saw it in the second half. Even on that first drive, they started to get the running game going a little bit. They had a couple of good runs. They got the play action going a little bit. I think they threw a screen to Devontae Smith on that
yeah.
opening drive as well. And it actually looked like a function. It looked functional, which was all you really needed it to be when your defense held the Saints to 13 points.
And then on that same drive to cap it off, there was a holding penalty on Landon Dickerson, which was questionable to say the
Oh, yeah,
least.
that was
Because
a BS call. That was a
yeah,
BS
I
call.
don't think it was. It shouldn't have been. That should have been 7 points right there. But whatever, it happens in the NFL.
And I mean, you're going to
But
have adversity like that. You got to overcome it. I mean, we'll get into the Steelers in a second, but there was a BS call on Cam Hayward in that game too. That
yeah,
shouldn't have been called. That literally led to a Ravens touchdown. It otherwise would have been a field goal. You're going to face stuff like that. You're going to face bad calls. But you know
yeah,
what? When your play calling is bad and you're literally trying to attack the strength of this Saints defense rather than run the football against them, which you know they're clearly not as good at, and you've been successfully running the ball all year, especially when you have Jack Driscoll in there, who's clearly not as good a pass protector as Lane Johnson. There's no question about that. They choose to throw the ball 32 times with Gardner Minshew. Yeah, I think some of the blame has to go there.
and I'll say Minshew didn't exactly help himself. He looked a bit quite rattled in the pocket. He didn't do himself any favors by not moving out of the pocket. There were times where he held onto the ball a little too long, which led to sacks. So part of like some of those sacks could, or a couple of those, I'd say, could be attributed to him at least. And then some of his throws are erratic. They're overthrown, out of bounds. You know, they just again didn't get into a rhythm. And I didn't even mention this that the first four drives are all 3 and outs, 0 points in 30 minutes in one half. That's the worst half. Like I said, like they've had all season long. So it just nothing clicked. I mean, they had 313 yards, which still isn't even. This is well below their average of it's like 340 plus or something like that. But 78 of those yards came from AJ Brown, that long touchdown.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was just time of possession. Like I said, Eagles only had 20 almost 23 minutes of it. So it was just bad across the board. This was one of those wake up calls the Eagles sort of needed. And it also just shows how much they miss Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, and I mean this needs to be the end of the conversation on Jalen Hurts. Like anybody can play in this Eagles offense. This
Yeah.
Eagles offensive line and this entire roster is so talented. And put any quarterback in there, they'll be fine. Like, no, that's not the case. Like Jalen Hurts deserves to be the MVP this season. Like he has elevated. Look, Gardner Minshew played bad. The play calling was bad. It was you've lamented it. It was one of the worst Eagles offensive performances. But anybody that can sit here and tell me that Jalen Hurts isn't legit and that he doesn't bring this Eagles offense to another level, I think you're just foolish.
Yeah. It's just also the part of it's obviously the run game, but as a passer, you could say Gardner. I mean, you might make the argument before this season Gardner Minshew was better as a passer. Not anymore. It's just
Not
like
anymore. No
uh,
way.
no, like his presence was missed clearly. It's just as a passer, I feel like Jalen Hurts was much more decisive as opposed to Gardner Minshew. Then again, Minshew hasn't really had the first team reps as opposed to Jalen Hurts. Fine,
I
I'll
mean,
give
but
you that.
still,
But still,
you can even talk about the fact that Hurts has the better arm strength. Some of the throws that he has put into tight windows this season are
yeah,
just like it's literally at the level of some of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league, and it's on deep balls, all different types of routes. I mean, he has been slinging the ball this season. Um, so to say that, I think this dismisses any fact of him or shows the importance of him to this Eagles team.
yeah, and now they're gonna need him even more against the Giants. I'll sort of transition into that. Like you said at the beginning, it's a must win now for the Eagles. Win, you get the NFC East and the first seed in the conference. It shouldn't have come to this, but they're going to have to do it the hard way. And I'll say this too, even though I don't know how likely this is, that the Giants might rest their starters or whatever. But it doesn't matter. You just go out and play your football, the football that you know how to play. It just I feel like the last few games, ever since the Hurts injury, it's been a bit of a struggle. So at least get into some sort of rhythm. Find what worked best for you. I mean, I don't expect Hurts to be running. I'll get into that a little bit more later on when we preview the Giants game. But you just find some sort of get back to your identity, like run the football. Make it simple. Don't overcomplicate things. Just get back to the basics, and just execute really. And it's must win. It's a must win for the Eagles.
And I mean, it's another week. I mean, this has been the last couple weeks now. It's another week where you're going up against a defense in the Giants that's not good against the run. Like, whether
Yeah,
Jalen Hurts is healthy or not, and even if you're using him in more of a limited basis, but he's able to play, like, run the football. That is what you need to do. Like, I don't know what the health of Miles Sanders is, what's been going on with him. You could probably elaborate better on that than me. But even if it has to be Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell leading the charge, like, you can still be effective running the football with those guys behind this line of scrimmage and behind this Giants defense that's pretty bad against the run.
yeah. I mean, Miles Sanders' injuries. I believe it's a knee injury he suffered during practice. He didn't practice. I want to say it was last Wednesday. Then upgraded to limited. Then he eventually played. So that'll continue to be monitored throughout. We'll see what happens there. But like you said, yeah, you still have other quality backs who can run the ball. I mean, Boston Scott's known as a Giants killer, so good. You rely on him. Rely on Kenneth Gainwell. They're
Yeah.
both solid runners. It's
Yeah.
not like you have it on the roster for a reason. So
Yeah. And
um,
I don't want to get into the Giants game too much right now because I know we're going to talk a little bit about that later and kind of the implications with the division and the one seed. But were there any other takeaways that you had from this game or anything else that you wanted to comment on?
I just want to say, player of the game was Hassan Reddick. 2 sacks again, 16 on the season. I mean, just getting higher in his career high. Most he's had in a season. He's by far the most consistent player on the team. I mean, he's one of the only positives in this past week. It's so fun to watch him as a pass rusher. It's great. So good. And hopefully the injury bug doesn't plague him, at least, because he's been so good this season.
He has been such a huge free agent pickup. I mean, probably the best one that the Eagles have had. I mean, really since 2016 when they built that roster. I mean, can you think back to another free agent addition that has been to the level that Hassan Reddick has been this year?
Not in recent memory, no.
Yeah,
He's
I
definitely
mean,
the best.
there's
So far.
significant ones. But yeah, I mean, he has been an absolute unit for the Eagles on this defense getting to the quarterback. One other thing I want to mention too that I feel like we not really to rag on Gardner Minshew, but also that pick six was pretty bad at the end of the game, which I
Yeah.
don't think we commented on that, but that essentially sealed the game for the Eagles and pretty much it made it a 2-score game, a deficit that was insurmountable basically with the amount of time that was left.
Yeah, and I mean, he telegraphed that pass. He just stared down his receiver and made it easy for Marshawn Lattimore. So, yeah, it ended the game, basically. So,
All right, sounds good. I think that'll be all for the Eagles until we talk about that Giants preview a little bit. But that being said, we could get to some more good news now.
yeah, please.
Wow, I mean, I essentially wrote the Steelers off a couple episodes ago. I said, you know what? And maybe it was almost a little bit of reverse psychology because you know me, I'm super positive anytime, even if there's a sliver of hope, I'll say we have a chance. But
Yeah.
I mean, I essentially wrote the Steelers off after the initial loss to the Ravens a couple weeks ago. When they lost to the Ravens at Acrisure Stadium, I said, that's it. That's it for the playoff chances. And here they are. They've since, won all of their games since. And now this week they go down into Baltimore and get the huge win over the Ravens. And man, it was capped by that amazing drive at the end of the game led by Kenny Pickett. Kenny franchise, baby. Kenny franchise leading the game-winning drive. He was 5 for 6 on that drive for 64 yards and obviously had the touchdown pass where he scrambled out to his left and hit Najee Harris out of the backfield for the game-winning touchdown. Also had 2 one-yard QB sneaks that were pretty big on that final drive as well. So another progression in Kenny Pickett's, awesome rookie season here. I can't say enough about kind of the progression that we've seen from him from when he first came in against the Jets, those first couple weeks, to kind of his development, kind of finding a rhythm in this offense, not turning the ball over, protecting the football, kind of being a game manager, to now to the point where we've seen him progress to he's protecting the football, he's playing with moxie, he's leading these big-time game-winning drives in back-to-back weeks. I mean, really now it feels like the next step is really just to put it all together and do it over the whole course of a game, and really be able to convert more when you get these opportunities in the red zone, and really just kind of capitalize on these nice drives that they've been putting together and don't settle for field goals. So I feel like we're just continuing to see Kenny Pickett progress at this point. And when you see him do this stuff, Chris Collinsworth said it. He said it during the broadcast. He was like, if this is a play that Mahomes made at the end of the game, we would be talking about how he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory, in his third or fourth year, whatever year Mahomes is in right now.
Yeah.
And it is a Mahomes-like play with some magic at the end of a game. I mean, that was on a third down that Kenny Pickett made that completion to Najee Harris. And I mean, as a Steelers fan, it's amazing, and it's a game that kept the Steelers' hopes alive for the playoffs by getting that win.
Man, that was some drive. And I remember texting you about it, like in all caps. I was like Kenny Pickett or something like that. And just like, man, I was so excited for two reasons. The smaller one of which is, I predicted the score correctly, 16-13. He got that right for me. I didn't put money on it, but just for the hell of it. But it just that to me, was just like back-to-back weeks. He's done it again. Like that is crazy. When they were struggling, I mean, it was kind of a slugfest the last 2 weeks in the first half, first three quarters, and to win it in the end, against the Raiders last week at home, and then against a division rival against the Ravens. I mean, I love that. That just like shows, like you said, his progression. He looks like a veteran now. It looks like he's been playing in the league for quite a while. It was just that had me excited.
I want to ask you about that a little bit, because it was basically a carbon copy of last week, the script where the Steelers offense wasn't able to capitalize and put up more than field goals for most of the game. The defense stood on its head, continued to get stop after stop and get the ball back to the offense. And then Kenny Pickett led the game-winning drive in both of them. It's very similar from week to week. But you're talking about Kenny Pickett right now, and I actually wrote this question down to you. You said Kenny Pickett's been playing like a veteran to a certain extent. You as an outsider, when you view this rookie season of Kenny Pickett, how he's progressed through the weeks, obviously what he's done the last 2 games, how do you view Kenny Pickett at this point? Do you still see him as, okay, he's like a rookie that we're still kind of feeling out what his ceiling is at the NFL level? Or is it at the point that like even people outside of like Steelers Nation are viewing Kenny Pickett as like, holy cow, the Steelers are literally going to go from Ben Roethlisberger to their next franchise quarterback without skipping a beat?
I mean, I hope it's that. I hope it's.
Is that what
like
you see though? Because I feel like there's
right.
still, you could still make the case like, okay, he's done enough to get it done, but is his ceiling a franchise quarterback, or is his ceiling a game manager that, you'll make a couple playoff runs with him like Andy Dalton did with the Bengals back in the day?
No, I think he's the face of the franchise for the next decade. I think he should be. I mean, listen, it's a rookie who's delivering clutch drives at the end of the game. that's not an easy thing to do for a rookie, more like especially a rookie, a first year player. We were talking before the season how I mean, we didn't want to see Kenny Pickett all season and a good ride with Mr. Trubisky. And that's all out the window now. I mean, he's
Yeah,
proven
absolutely.
how much he's developed. This is just the start of it. Like he's ascending. He's gonna get better, which is the scary thing for other like teams in the AFC or in the NFL in general. For Steelers fans, I would be excited as hell to have him for the next decade. I mean, he's just man,
Look,
so fun.
there's some things you can't coach, and one of them is having an it factor, and that may
Yeah,
be what we've seen from Kenny Pickett at this point. Look, you're always able to refine. You're always going to be able to refine his ability to make decisions or be more accurate. His deep ball will probably never be the best in the NFL. But at the end of the day, when you have that it factor, when you can put together game-winning drives, when you play with a moxie and a confidence, and he even said it himself in his post-game press conference, he feels like he's the best player on the field anytime he steps onto the field. That is such a huge factor. So, I mean, to see him deliver and pick up wins and lead the charge of this Steelers offense, and really, he carries a leadership presence that, I think already in his first year, you're seeing more than guys around the NFL who have been playing in the league now for 2-3 years that we're calling franchise quarterbacks. So yeah, he may never be the most physically gifted, but to see it culminated with his experience coming out of college, obviously a 24-year-old rookie, but that combined with his confidence, his leadership, and his it factor, yeah, I'm very excited, and I think that there were people out there who could still make the case maybe he's not a franchise quarterback. He doesn't have enough to be, more than a Jimmy Garoppolo or an Andy Dalton, a guy or a guy that where everything has to be perfect for you to really succeed and make a deep playoff run. But I'm with you, man. I'm so excited about what we've seen from not only him, but I mean, you want to talk about this rookie class as well a little bit before I get into my second takeaway. I mean, I think there's excitement about George Pickens as well. He looks like a
yeah.
stud at the wide receiver
Oh
position.
God, yeah.
We saw DeMarvin Leal, who was a third-round pick this season. He played a huge role in this game, defending the run on the defensive line. He looks like he could be a staple of the D-line for years to come. Mark Robinson is a late-round draft pick that a lot of people are excited about as potentially being a player that could have a huge impact down the road once he gets some more experience and adjusted to the NFL game. So, I mean, we're potentially seeing the next young core of this Steelers team, and now we're talking about the fact that they could potentially make the playoffs and be a perennial contender in the AFC North going forward.
Yeah.
Because it seems like they've hit on a lot of stuff well.
Yeah, I mean, this class has been, I mean, pretty. I mean, it's been delivering. George Pickens, Kenny Pickett, definitely. It's just like you said. There's all this pressure when your season's on the line, and I mean, they all stepped up for it. I mean, that's huge, especially Kenny Pickett. I mean, that obviously credit goes to the defense for keeping them in the game, but ultimately, Kenny Pickett delivering at the end. Division rival. That's already pressure. You never want to lose a division rival. You hate this rival, especially like it just you never
Yeah,
want to lose. And then Mike Tomlin and
it's
his winning
storybook against
record.
this rivalry. Yeah,
Like yeah, and there's just there's so many different factors. Obviously, I feel like the pressure doesn't get to him. It doesn't seem like it does, especially the last 2 weeks. It's just when you can deliver in those moments when the pressure's the highest, the stakes are at the highest. It's incredible to see Kenny Pickett deliver at such in his first year. It's great. It's great.
it's fantastic, and I mean, hopefully, I mean, I don't even want to say hopefully. I mean, that we're gonna look to see him continue to keep it going, and I don't want to add a negative note to it, but kind of part of this point I feel like is the fact that like they need to start capitalizing on more than just these game-winning drives. It's
Right.
so
Right.
promising to see this, but like punch some more of these long drives into the end zone. I mean, whether it was the opening drive when Chris Boswell hit the I don't remember if it was the opening drive when Boswell hit the upright, but they had two field goals in this game prior to this opening drive, and Boswell obviously hit the upright on the other one. And I think that some of the question I'm still going to defend the point that I think Matt Canada, you have to look at potentially replacing him in the offseason.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that I think you could say this, and this kind of gets into my next point here, my next takeaway is how unstoppable the run game was in this one. The Steelers had 198 yards on the ground in this one. There was only one play action called. And that comes down to the play caller at the end of the day. And I
Yeah.
think that's a little bit of an indictment on Canada. I don't remember who it was, but a radio personality in Pittsburgh tweeted out the drive prior to the Steelers game-winning one when they had to settle for a field goal. They handed the ball off twice to Jalen Warren, and then it was a pass attempt to Steven Sims, I believe, in the red zone. It's like, why are these plays going to Jalen Warren and Steven Sims, who was an undrafted rookie or was picked up this season from free agency off of someone's practice squad? It's like, draw these plays up to Pickens, to Freiermuth, to Deontay Johnson, hand the ball off to Najee Harris. And I think some of that comes back to the play calling. Now, I'm not going to harp on it too much on a loss, but I think it's something that needs to be kept in mind as we obviously head towards eventually the offseason at some point. But, I think that Matt Canada certainly is not out of the woods yet. And I think even if the Steelers somehow find a way into the playoffs, his resume as a whole this season is going to have it's going to need a look. But I started this point off with my main second takeaway here is the run game was unstoppable. And I wish the Steelers had done this the first time they played the Ravens, is just pound the rock, because that's what they're best at. This offensive line is clearly better running the football than when it comes to pass protection. And we saw it in this game. Really, Najee Harris's best game of the year. I gave him the player of the game in this one. 22 carries, 111 yards. He had the game-winning receiving touchdown thrown by Kenny Pickett. Jalen Warren also with the big game. He had 76 yards and 12 carries. So they were pounding the ball. The offensive line was playing great. They've started every game together, so they've really come together as a unit. And here's an interesting stat for you. This is the first time since 2016 that two Steeler running backs have had over 75 yards in a game. That was Le'Veon Bell and LeGarrette Blount. So this has been arguably the Steelers' best all-around running attack in a football game, in a singular football game, maybe since 2016. And they did it against a top 3 run defense in the NFL. So it's just incredible what they were able to do on the ground. And when you're able to do it against this Ravens run defense, who can't you do it against?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to say, Chris Collinsworth on the call. I mean, after I think it was Najee Harris runs like later on in the game, he said, "Somebody call an exorcist. I think Najee Harris is possessed." I mean, he was running like so hard.
I think Collinsworth. We're bringing up Chris Collinsworth a lot in this broadcast.
Yeah, we are.
I guess for good reason. I think he also said at one point, I even put this on the Instagram post with my takeaways. He even said that this may be the best he's ever seen Najee Harris run the football. And it may be true, honestly. I mean, Najee Harris was like a man possessed. It was just wear and tear on this Ravens defense, run after run, and every single run, it seemed like he was getting 3 yards and then adding an extra 4 after initial contact. It didn't seem like I don't know if he was stopped behind the line of scrimmage the whole game.
I don't know if he was either, because that man was running like he just wouldn't stop. Oh my goodness, it was. Yeah, wow. Najee Harris ran so hard. I mean, he said it best. It was fun to watch, just like so physical. It's just like, oh man, like
and
such a young back.
It showed up in the third down efficiency as well. The Steelers were 10 for 16 on downs. 16, that's a ton of third downs to have in a football game. Yeah. But it's because every single drive, Najee Harris was getting these runs where he would be 3 yards, 4 yards. Okay, you've got third and short. 4 yards, another 2-yard gain, another third and short. And because you were getting these third and short opportunities, it was creating such a 10 for 16. You take that any day of the week on third downs in the NFL. And even when they were stopped, they were still efficient on fourth down as well. Converting on fourth down opportunities on that final drive. Kenny Pickett had I believe he had 2. If it wasn't fourth downs, it was third and shorts that they converted as well. So highly efficient from the Steelers on just moving the football and moving the chains and getting the conversions on third down. So a ton of credit to the offensive line. And, it's just so impressive if they can do it against this Ravens. If this formula can work of running the football, protecting the football, and your defense is going to play at this level. And I'm going to get into this a little bit, but man, I hope they can find a way to just have an opportunity in the playoffs. See how far they give us the Buffalo Bills in the first round. See how far that they've progressed since that early season game when the Bills lit it up against the Steelers. So, yeah, I'm super excited, and a ton of credit has to go to just what the Steelers were able to do executing this in this game, running the football. And I'll
Yeah.
briefly touch on my third point here, which is just overcoming adversity in this game, whether it was the Boswell missed field goal or the penalty on Cam Hayward, which was such BS.
Yeah.
Getting pulled, literally he was pulled down. As he was getting pulled down, had his arms out. Like, I am not trying to be like down on the guy right now. And you even saw after the play, Minka Fitzpatrick kind of yelling at him, like, dude, you're a leader of this defense. Like, what are you doing picking up a penalty like that in that spot? And he's even saying, like, that wasn't me. I was like, it
Yeah.
was just a bad call on the refs all around. And there was obviously the false start on the Steelers' first drive when they were in the red zone on Pat Fryermuth that backed them up and they had to settle for the field goal. But through all that adversity, they were able to overcome it, do just enough on offense. Obviously, the game-winning drive by Kenny Pickett. And the defense played incredible. I mean, they held the Ravens to 3 points in the second half, 0 points on the last 4 Ravens drives of the game. And obviously, I think the drive that you could point to as being like, wow, what a hold by the Steelers defense was when the Ravens ran it out on the kick return to about midfield. And
Yeah.
it was literally, the sequence was tackle for a loss by TJ Watt, who actually had a really good game.
Yeah.
It was in consideration for my player of the game, but Najee Harris did too much. He looks like he's back in full form, but it was tackle for loss by TJ Watt for -2 yards, an incomplete pass, and then a second incomplete pass where Terrell Edmonds just came up, stuck the receiver, and jarred the ball loose. And Justin Tucker, anytime you're on the opposite half of the field, Justin Tucker's in range, and they were able to do just enough to keep him out of field goal range. And that was so key to keep it a one score game, and really allow the touchdown to put the Steelers up by 3 rather than tie the game, which would have been the case if the Ravens had even just gained, if the Ravens had gained 3 yards, they might have been within Justin Tucker's range. But the Steelers actually negated the Ravens on that drive, which was so huge, and just props to the defense. They've really put it together. The last really, I'd say 3 or 4 weeks, they've been playing their best football.
And then they sealed the game like they did last week with an interception.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, it was gritty. It was tough, gritty performance. I mean, just all around, really. And they're still alive. I mean, the fact that the Jets had to lose, and what was the Dolphins also, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Had to lose.
And
And
both
those things
happened.
happened.
Going into
Yeah.
that game, knowing those outs had already happened, I told you, like, I just want to have one more week where I can just fully be invested, like, hey, there's a little bit of hope. And we got that, and it made this Ravens game. These last 2 weeks has been some of the most fun I've had watching football. I mean, I don't even know since when. I mean, I don't know if I had this much fun at all last season watching football. Like, genuinely. Like, this
Yeah.
may be dating back, like, to the COVID season when the Steelers started off that year with the big undefeated streak. It may date back that long ago to when I had this much fun watching football compared to these 2 weeks. So the vibes are immaculate right now in Steeler land, man. I will tell you that. And I think we should just keep it on the Steelers right now and preview this next game. I mean, you alluded to the fact that they had to have the Jets lose and they had to have the Patriots beat the Dolphins. And both of those things happened last week. And now the Steelers are sitting here where they need to win. Here's the scenario. It's almost, I want to even say, not even necessarily the fact, it's almost not even far-fetched this could happen anymore. Like, it's almost likely. Their odds at the start of the week were 2% to make the playoffs. After this win, they're up to 18%. This is according to some metric that The Athletic has. So the Steelers need to win this week. They need to beat the Browns. The Jets need to beat the Dolphins. The Dolphins will be without Tua Tagovailoa, potentially down to their third-string quarterback, Skylar Thompson, if Teddy Bridgewater can't go. And the Buffalo Bills, who could still be playing for the 1 seed at this point, need to beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
All stuff that's potentially likely here, and all games are going to be kicking off at 1:00.
I mean, let's be real. I don't think the Patriots are going to beat the Bills. It's tough. I mean, I don't expect that to happen. The one that has me a bit hesitant is the Jets. Although, I mean, yeah, it's probably going to come down to Skylar Thompson, Teddy Bridgewater with his dislocated finger. Whether or not he can grip a football right now is the question. I feel like he probably won't go. That's especially if it's in your throwing hand. That's something you can't really push through if you can't grip a ball. So I mean, it's kind of like things the stars are aligning sort of thing. I'm not gonna say it's gonna happen, but it's almost like it's like right there, like
It,
it
it,
could happen.
like honestly, it's just the fact that all this stuff is even feasible. It seems all right. Tell me if this is wrong. Last year, the Steelers needed. I don't remember what all the circumstances was, but the main thing was that the Colts had to lose to the Jaguars, I believe, last season for the
Yeah,
Steelers to sneak into the playoffs. What the Steelers need to happen this year with this last week of games feels more likely than how I felt last year when it came to the Colts needing to lose to the Jaguars. Like I
yeah,
almost feel more confident now that they're going to make the playoffs than last year when all that stuff did go their way.
yeah. I mean, last year it was a Carson Wentz joke. I forget the other things too, but
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, it seems at least a little more likely that the Steelers can make it this time around. I hope they do. That'd be fun. I know you obviously do. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but
And I mean, we could talk about this game a little bit. So, it actually kind of stinks that all these games are at 1 o'clock. Like, I like the fact that they're all together, so I'll be able to know right at 4. I'm gonna be driving, dude, for all these games. I'm driving up to Canada.
oh man,
I'm gonna be in the car in the upstate New York Adirondack Mountains, and then driving through the rural Canadian mountains up to Mont Tremblant, Canada, when all this is taking place. Like,
oh man,
I'm not gonna be able to watch, bro.
oh no, oh that's so unfortunate, man. I
I
mean,
think the only thing that I have possibly going for me is that we get to Canada right around like maybe like 2 o'clock, and we're stuck at the border for like 2 hours, and I'm able to just throw it on my phone. That I think that would be the only way I'm able to really watch it. Which I'm not pulling to get stuck at the border for that amount of time.
yeah,
But you know what? At least I'll have something to do if I'm sitting there and they're searching through all of our bags and everything like that. So I mean, hey,
yeah,
it's something. But just to touch on this game a little bit that the Steelers do have going up against the um, Browns in this one. The Browns are obviously already mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. Really, the couple main things. I'll keep it short here on what I'm looking for in this game, but you know, keep running the football. Don't mix things up now. You've fully established your identity, so it's at the point where run this football. I said it before. If you can run against the Ravens defense, which was top 3 in the NFL against the run, you can run the football against the Browns defense, which is 25th this year in yards per game given up against the run. They give up 134.4 yards per game against opposing running attacks. So the Steelers' offensive line, I feel like, can dominate on the ground and just do that. Don't turn the ball over. Last week when the Browns had the win against the Commanders, Carson went through 3 interceptions and he gave the Browns good field position, which led to Deshaun Watson ultimately being able to throw 3 touchdowns, even though he only had to throw the ball for he only had 9 completions in the game, and he still threw 3 touchdowns. So that tells you how big of a factor the turnovers were in last week's game. And that's just something that Kenny Pickett, I have confidence that he can avoid it. He's been very good at doing that all season, so there's no reason why that can't continue to happen. And then when you flip the ball over to the other side, Steelers defense, they did a solid job containing J.K. Dobbins, and obviously the Ravens are a super run-heavy team. They're going to get that again with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And Tomlin even said in his Monday press conference, or in his Tuesday press conference, excuse me, he said, the first thing he said came to, preparing for the Browns. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, got to slow those guys down. They had a combined 160 yards in the Week 3 matchup. It needs to be less than that in this game. And, honestly, if you can keep those guys combined around 100 yards, I think you'll certainly be in a pretty good position to win this game. But I'm confident the Steelers can go in there and get the job done. I think they're absolutely riding momentum at this point, knowing that they have a chance to make the playoffs. And I think it could just come down to what happens around the rest of the NFL if other stuff goes their way.
yeah. I mean, I literally had those points written down too. So I mean, but Deshaun Watson, if you force, the Browns to throw the ball, I would definitely take the Steelers defense over Deshaun Watson, who hasn't looked great since coming back from his reinstatement or whatever. So I just don't. I wouldn't trust him to win the game for them. So yeah, the Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are the biggest factors in this game, and I'm sure I feel like there's a good chance that the Steelers are going to be able to do this, and especially if they run the ball.
I still get the vibe that it's going to be a low scoring affair just because I think both of these teams are going to run the ball so much. There's going to be so much running, and And if both of them end up having success, we could end up seeing some seriously long drives that take up a huge amount of time. So, it wouldn't shock me if this is a low scoring affair. And it comes down to being, within 10, within 7 points in this one. And it's a really close game, but, I got to have confidence that the Steelers will find a way to pull this one out. And, hopefully the Steelers defense will continue to play, lights out and just get a couple big time stops.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better. I think there's a real shot. For the sake of the drama, I hope the Steelers win and
I
and
hope
the
so
other
too,
results
man.
go their way. But yeah, huge game. Last
Huge
one,
game.
potentially last game.
Potentially. Yeah. Yeah. Potentially last game. And, one other thing I'll say before we move back over to the Eagles here is, a couple injury notes real quick. The Steelers are actually relatively really healthy for this time of the year. But Akella Witherspoon looks like he could potentially be back this week, which is big because there's question about James Pierre, whether he'll be good to go. So, one of those two corners will be healthy. William Jackson, who I kind of wrote off last week, not expecting to see him play. He was designated to return from IR this week. So I doubt he's ready to go for this game, but, maybe he finds a way to put it all together and get a helmet in this week's game. But if not, maybe he'd be ready for the playoffs. But I don't know. I'm still skeptical if he's even going to be able to come back this season. So that's a couple injury notes. And, just to wrap things up on the Steelers, as this could potentially be the last time we're talking about them this season, looking ahead to a game. You know what? I almost just used an F-bomb there, but screw all the Tomlin haters. This guy is the man, one of the top 5 best head coaches active in the NFL today. This guy, if you're a Steelers fan out there and you were calling for his job at any point this season, or really at any point throughout just really his tenure, just the control that he has over his locker room, everybody, all of the players, not only on his team but around the NFL, everybody wants to play for Mike Tomlin. He keeps these guys focused on the goal, on the season, and to be able to really take this Steelers team that people had really just they'd wrote him off at the bye week. At the bye week, people were counting this team out of potentially being able to do something, and now they're one win away from securing another season above 500 for Mike Tomlin. He gets a ton of credit for just being one of the best head coaches currently in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely. And he might have another winning season. Maybe that streak stays alive. But yeah, I totally agree with everything you just said.
I want to just quote Kay Adams, and she kind of butchered her quote a little when she was on air saying it, but there's just some things that never die. There's just some things that, never kind of, you're always going to have them in life. Birds fly south in the winter. People, death is eventually going to come. You're always going to pay taxes. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are always going to be in the playoffs. Let's get it done this week. Let's win the game. Let's get the results have to go our way. Let's get some Pittsburgh Steeler playoff football. That's what I'm talking about, Ricardo. Let's make it happen.
I love that. Yes.
Let's make it happen. I want it to happen, man. I need it.
I'm going to have that game on, and I'll probably text you even if you are driving. I'll be like, yeah, this could happen, but we'll see.
I might get a free trial of Sirius XM just so I can listen to the game in the car. Honestly,
I say you do it.
All right. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully the season will continue. But let's talk about this Eagles matchup a little bit. That has a lot of implications at this point. I don't think we really expected it to be this significant a couple weeks ago, but here we are, and this is a huge game for the Eagles.
Yeah. So the easiest way to do this is to win for the Eagles to clinch the conference and the NFC East. They could also have the Cowboys and Niners lose, but that's far less likely. The Niners playing the Cardinals, Cowboys playing Sam Howell and the Commanders, who's getting his first start. So unlikely both cases. So just get it done. They'll get some help with Robert Quinn and CJ Gardner-Johnson designated to return from IR, so they're expected to play this week. Although Gardner-Johnson, I thought was going to play last week, he didn't. But it seems like he's in better shape now, better than he was last week. So that's going to be some help on defense, especially with Josh Sweat probably out. Getting Robert Quinn back is another depth piece, another edge rusher to hopefully fill in that role. And obviously the biggest thing is Jalen Hurts coming back from injury. We said even before the the Saints game that Jalen Hurts is going to be back for the Giants game, and so the big questions. I mean, there's so many questions whether or not he'll be fully healthy, whether he'll be running the ball. But just like I said before, like earlier on in the episode, just keep it simple, make it easy, run the ball. That's the biggest thing. Just run the ball. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Like just make it easier for the offensive line, especially Jack Driscoll, who struggled. And even if they are passing the ball, give him some help, some tight end help. Put in Jack Stoll to Chip or Grant Calcaterra. I don't know. Just do some more of that to make it easier. I don't want Jalen Hurts taking all these unnecessary hits again or running and getting hit and all that. So it's just I feel like that's the simplest way to put it. Just make it easy, go back to the basics, run the football, and kind of rely on the defense. I don't expect this to be easy. I kind of expect the Giants to play the starters for at least a half or so, maybe even less. But
Yeah.
Even so, just win the game. I don't really have much else to say because
You gotta win. You gotta win.
just win. And
I mean, it's like here we were, or at least I guess maybe I was posing these hypotheticals a little bit more last week, but just saying like, oh, like what do you do with Jalen Hurts if the Eagles beat the Saints and then you don't want him to get rusty or anything like that? Well, now you're at the point where this is essentially a must-win game because you don't want to be a wild card team after the great season you've had and have to go on the road for 3 playoff games potentially. So, I mean, you got to win this game. You got to lock up the division. And, with Jalen Hurts, really the mindset that he has being that the leader he is, and obviously, he's got that dog in him, frankly. I mean, he's gonna, like, I'd be shocked if he doesn't play in this game. And even if there's questions about whether he's fully healthy, knowing the implications of this game for the Eagles, I'd be shocked if he wasn't out there. And now I think part of this is with how banged up this Eagles team is at this point, you really need that first round bye. You need a week for your team to get healthy. Whether it's Lane Johnson who's trying to just even play again this season, whether it's Josh Sweat who went down with the big injury that I guess isn't as bad. Maybe you can comment on that a little bit. Isn't as bad as it initially looked. Trying to get Robert Quinn and CJ Gardner-Johnson back fully healthy. The list goes on of these Eagles players that they need this bye week to get fully healthy before this potential playoff run.
Yeah, they need it bad. With regards to the Josh Sweat injury, that was a neck injury. He was transported to the hospital, but he had movement in all extremities. He's listed as day-to-day, so
which is so fortunate. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, anytime you're talking about the neck or the back, and we kind of to a certain extent talked about this with some of the major injuries at the start of the show, but just to be, the great season that he's having, really a great partner opposite Hassan Reddick this season. So it's great that it looks like he's potentially going to be all right for the playoffs. And I think I even read something today, like there's talk he's going to be able to play in this game.
Yeah, actually, the Eagles just released their injury report. Lane Johnson did not practice, did not participate. Avonte Maddox as well. Josh Sweat didn't either. Jalen Hurts listed as limited. Miles Sanders with the knee injuries also listed as limited. So, I mean, it's still Wednesday. It's still kind of early. So
the Eagles you got to get this game, dude.
They just need it.
Because, frankly, the 49ers aren't losing. Like, if you lose this game, the 49ers will get the 1 seed. You'll lose out on that bye, but it's also very likely that the Cowboys could win their game as well. So really all it comes down to is the Eagles got to take care of business.
Yep, there's no other way to put it. Just get it done. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just get. I'd rather it be, but just. Get
I don't think Ricardo. Tell me if I'm being outlandish here, but to me, this game almost feels like the difference between an Eagles first round loss versus a deep playoff run if they win this game or not. Because if you win this game and you get the first round bye and you can let guys get that extra week to rest and get healthy, and the road to the playoffs goes through Philadelphia, I feel very confident about this team going on a deep playoff run. But if they lose out on the division, lose out on the first round bye, have to go into San Francisco, have to potentially go into Dallas or Minnesota to make a deep playoff run when your roster's not fully healthy, and you're going to have to do one of those things in the first round of the playoffs, to me, I think that this game, whether you win or lose, makes all the difference on whether we're talking about the Eagles making a deep run, potentially through the NFC, potentially to the Super Bowl, versus, an early round exit out of the playoffs. and a really disappointing end to what's been such a promising season.
Yeah, that's how I view it too. It just there's no other way around it really, and it just if the Eagles do lose this game, they have no one to blame than themselves. It is all on them. It doesn't matter what happens around the league. Just get it done. That's what I've been saying the last few weeks. Just get it done. It comes down to you executing, getting your job done, and winning at the end of the day, which they
Yep.
haven't been able to the last 2 weeks. So
You've been
we'll see what happens.
You've been absolutely saying that same thing for the last 2 weeks, and they built this cushion, and now it's coming down to the point where they're at the last feather in the cushion at this point. If it
Yep.
doesn't happen this week, it's not happening. And
It's yeah.
I mean, man, I'll say as nerve wracking as that may be for you as an Eagles fan, I mean, we're sitting here and we just spent an hour and 5 minutes talking about Steelers and Eagles football, and obviously, other stuff going around the NFL with Hamlin and everything. But I mean, what an exciting time for the Steelers and Eagles organizations to be so relevant at the end of the season, to potentially be looking into the playoffs now.
Yeah, this is what we love to see. This is what we live for, even if it is, coming down to the wire. That's just the excitement of it, the anxiety, all the every emotion possible. It's gonna be a fun one to watch.
Absolutely, man. What an exciting last week of the season for these two teams. You have any final thoughts before we wrap things up here?
Oh, I mean, thoughts and prayers for Hamlin, and just good luck to our teams. I guess
Yeah.
we'll just sit back and watch. You'll be driving, but best of luck to you there in
Yeah,
Canada too.
thank you, dude. I mean, I think you said it. Both of these teams. Hopefully both of them can pull out wins in this one and things go right for the Steelers. But like you said at the start of that, right there, obviously, I think that's kind of the perfect way to end this. Thoughts and prayers with Damar Hamlin, and hopefully we'll be doing this next episode and we'll have great news on him, and he'll be getting back to living a normal life and recovering from this, and hopefully he's able to pull through. But I think I speak for both of us as we close out this episode that thank you for joining us, and let's all just continue to keep Damar Hamlin in our thoughts and prayers as he continues to try to fight to pull through from this cardiac arrest and in critical condition. Hopefully we can do it. We're all with him. The NFL community is with him, and yeah, we'll hope and we'll pray that we get some news here shortly.
Yeah, man.